this equation we have 2/3 of a whole amount is equal to 4. Keep in mind the x is the whole amount we want, and we're trying to find for one whole. But right now we have 2/3, but we want 1. I'm going to draw a picture to represent that situation over here on the right. So next to it, I'm going to draw 2/3 of a whole, which means I'm going to draw a rectangle, split it up into 3 parts, and I'm going to shade 2 out of 3. That's 2/3, 2 out of 3. And that, so 2/3 of a whole is equal to 4. So I'm just going to draw 4 circles to represent the 4. It could be anything, so I just picked a circle. And to solve this, again, we're trying to find out the value for one whole, not 2/3, one whole amount. So in other words, in the algebraic representation, we want 1x, not 2/3. Here's going to be my first move. I am going to multiply the left side by 3 and the right side by 3. So multiplication property, you have to do the same thing to both sides. And in the picture, I'm going to show what I just drew. So I'm going to, or that step I just did. So I'm going to draw 3 times the amount on the left side. So I'm going to triple it. So assume these are all the same sizes, they're identical. I'm just drawing by freehand, so it might not look identical, but in theory, we want these to be identical. So you can see here we have triple the amount. We started with 2, now I have 6 of them shaded. And on the right side, that means I have to triple it as well to keep it balanced. So I'm going to do 1, 2, 3, 4. That's double the amount. And then if I do it one more time, that means I would have tripled it. Alright, so the equation is still balanced because I did the same thing to both sides. So that's the multiplication property of equality. Next, I'm going to simplify. So 3 of those 2/3, it gives me 6/3 when you multiply it together. And on the right side, when you multiply that, you get 12. And when I simplify it visually, I'm going to reorganize it so that instead of having 2 out of 3 shaded, I want to fill out as many of them as I can, and then the leftovers will be the last one. So if that doesn't make sense, let me just show you. So I'm going to redraw the triple amount that I had. And remember, I had 2, 4, 6 shaded. So I'm going to do shade 6 again. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So you can see I reorganized it. And 6/3 is actually the same exact thing as 2 whole amounts. I don't even need that third amount shaded. And then on the right side, there's nothing to do here except redraw the same exact thing. So I have 12 of these all together. It's already simplified, which means I could actually get rid of this extra bar here. So I don't need that. I'm going to get rid of that because it just reorganized. And on the left side of my equation, 6 divided by 3, you can see that was 2x equal to 12. We're almost done. We have 2 whole amounts is equal to 12. We only want 1 whole amount, which means that if I were to split this up into 2 groups, and here's what I mean by that. I'm going to say this is one of my groups, and this is a second group. And then I'm going to do the same thing on the right side. I'm going to split up into 2 groups. So they have to be identical, the same amount in each group. And you can see I did the same thing here. Which means that since we were able to divide both sides into 2 groups, I can now see that one of those whole amounts, so I have one of those whole amounts, it corresponds or matches up with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of those circles. So one whole amount is the same thing as 6 circles there. Algebraically, if I were to do the exact same step, splitting it up into 2 groups means we're using the division property of equality. We divided both sides into 2 groups. So that means that I'm going to divide both sides here by 2. I split it up into 2 groups. And when I simplify, I get one whole amount, 1x, is equal to 6. And that is the idea behind what's going on in this problem. There is a faster way. So as you've seen in that GIF that I showed you in the worksheet, you can actually do this in 1 step. But notice, I want you to pay attention to the steps we actually used. In this first step up here, we multiplied both sides by 3. That was the multiplication property of equality. And then in the step over here, we divided by 2 to both sides. That was the division property of equality. So basically we ended up multiplying both sides by 3 and dividing both sides by 2. And there's a faster way to do that. And it's basically the reciprocal of the fraction we're trying to turn into one whole amount. Here's what I mean by that. let's look at the same equation. So, right, we did the multiplication property. We multiplied both sides by 3 and divided both sides by 2. And what we're going to do here is actually do both things at the same time. So it saves us a little time by multiplying both sides by 3 and also dividing both sides by 2 at the same time. And basically this is called the reciprocal. If you have any fraction like a over b, a and b could be any number, except that, you know, it can't be 0 for a, because the reciprocal, when you flip it, you're going to have b over a. So it works for any number as long as it's not 0. Basically, you just switch the numerator and denominator. That's what it means to be a reciprocal. And if you notice, any two fractions, when you multiply them, if they're reciprocals of each other, like in this case, a and b times b over a, that's going to give me a times b over b times a. And since you see we have the same exact factors on the top and the bottom, that's going to simplify to 1. That's always going to be true. So in this case, you can see here, right, when I multiply it out, we get 6 over 6, and then we got x equals, if I were to make this 4 into a fraction, it'd be 4 over 1. And then we get 12 over 2 on the right side. And when I simplify, 6 divided by 6 is 1x, and 12 divided by 2 is 6. So we accomplished the same goal. We're just combining the two steps into one. So that's why if you're trying to solve an equation for a variable which has a coefficient, meaning the number is a fraction, like in this case 2/3 of the whole amount, or 2/3 x, use the reciprocal and you'll see in one step you'll get rid of that fraction and turn it into one whole amount.